Welcome back everyone, I'm Eric from Rare Candy, and here today we are back with another Battle Styles deck profile, this time showing off the new Victini VMAX. It's definitely been another one of these new VMAX Pokemon that we've had recently that kind of breathes new life into some of these old Pokemon that we've had for a while now, like the old Victini V from Sword and Shield base set. So that is what we are going to be building around today. And if you guys want to see this deck in action in the coming days, I will actually have a live match showing off Victini VMAX. So whenever that goes up, I will have a link down below in the description. And of course, guys, just smack that subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications. That way you'll get notified whenever that video drops and the rest of my upcoming Battle Styles content as well. But hopping into the actual deck that we have today, kicking things off, we have 3 copies of Victini V. This is going to be the one from Sword and Shield base set. So this is, for a while now, actually been one of the better 2-prize fire Pokemon we've had in the format. So it's kind of nice that this is actually a pre-evolution we can use as well. But Victini V here, 190 HP, 2 retreat, has 2 different attacks, the first of which for a single colorless energy, Spreading Flames. We attach up to 3 fire energy from discard to our Pokemon any way that we like, and it has the energy burst attack for 2 fire energy, 30 for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. And one of the things I really do like about Victini V as well is the fact that since we're leaning so heavily on this evolution line and playing so many of these, we can actually cut Volcanion out of this deck pretty much altogether. As you'll see, there's no copies of Volcanion in this deck, just because Spreading Flames a lot of the time is going to kind of do the same thing that we're going to be aiming to do with something like Volcanion. But with this is our pre-evolution that will get us into our VMAX. So unlike some of the other Fire VMAXs, I think Victini VMAX actually has probably a little bit more deck space just because of Victini V. So just a kind of a side tangent I want to throw out there. But yeah, very solid little guy here. Energy Burst is also a very fine attack. This is definitely going to be, I think, the preferred of the Victini Vs that we have in the format. But I am still playing 1 copy of the new Victini V from Battle Styles as well. This guy has a couple of different attacks, I think, that do have merit as well. This one, like the other one, 190 HP. This one does have a 1 retreat cost, so that is something that is a little bit better about this one. But 2 different attacks here. The first one for a fire energy, 10 plus 50 if your opponent's active is a Pokemon V. So that can sometimes actually set up math on certain things that you might be going against. You know, we do have some ways at hitting 300 damage with this deck, so sometimes against VMAX decks, this can be nice at getting in that chip damage. That way something like a Reshizard or a Heatran can come in later, clean up those knockouts potentially. So there are weird situations where this is good, but I do like this second attack as well for 2 fire. Just does 120 and you discard its energy. And the reason I like this is because this is actually a very energy efficient way at knocking out a Zacian V. So like, let's just say, sake of example, we're playing against ADP. They start with the Zacian and they're going first. You know, if they pass over to you, you can just Welder 2 to this guy and just do 120, easily knock it out. And we don't need a third energy like some of the other different fire attackers that we have in this list. So the old Victini V, definitely I think the preferred one, but the new one, it does give you a couple of, different options that you previously wouldn't have. But of course, the star of the show is going to be the new Victini VMAX. We're playing 4 copies of this guy, so a very heavy count here. New Pokemon that we're getting from Battle Styles, it's a VMAX. 2 retreat, much like its pre-evolution, water weakness still, has 310 HP, and 2 different attacks. The first of which is actually going to look very familiar. It's Spreading Flames. It's the same attack on the Sword and Shield Victini V, but we have a little bit more HP, so we can theoretically tank a hit if we do have to use this attack. But ideally, we don't want to have to rely on that. We would rather use the second attack here for a fire and colors. Does 100 plus 120 more if your opponent's active is a Pokemon V, and of course that does include Pokemon VMAX as well. So 220 for 2 is actually a fantastic damage to energy ratio. Likewise, if we look at something like Reshizard, it does 230 for 4. So very, very nice energy to damage ratio we have here. It is unfortunate that this is only limited to Pokemon V and VMAX, but nevertheless, I think that's still a really enticing attack that we have here. There's so many different decks that are running Pokemon V anyways. Like even if your opponent's not playing a VMAX deck, they're playing copies of Crobat V in their deck, they're playing Eldegoss V, etc. So this is definitely a very strong attack against a lot of decks in the format. And looking ahead into the future as tag teams become less and less relevant, this attack only gets better with time as well. So we're going kind of all in on this guy, trying to get this guy set up as quick as possible and just do a nice solid 220 while being able to tank a couple hits thanks to its 300 plus HP. But of course, fire is such a strong type, and there's so many other different attackers that we can run, and we are still going to run them. We are playing one copy of Reshizard in the deck. So Reshizard's been, one of the best fire Pokemon for a long time now. Has 3 different attacks, first of which Outrage, Fire, and a Colorless, 30 plus 10 for every damage counter on this guy. We play some ways at increasing our HP in this deck as well, so Reshizard is kind of a nice basic 3-prizer we can get down and play. That might be able to abuse Outrage, but its other attacks are also worth mentioning. Flare Strike for 230, 4 energy, we can't use it on the next turn. Not quite as energy efficient as our Victini, but still good against a lot of different things. And it has the powerful Double Blaze GX attack for 3 fire energy, just 200. But if we have 3 more fire energy, we do 100 more damage to go through any effects on our opponent's active Pokemon. So this can allow us to hit 300. That's a really good number to hit for. Like I said, that lines up really well with the first attack on the new Victini V. Likewise, we do have a copy of Heatran GX as well. This is going to be another potential Pokemon to abuse a GX attack with. So Heatran, of course, its ability, whenever it goes from your bench to your active, you can move your fire energy from your other Pokemon to Heatran, and it has the Hot Burn GX attack for a fire energy, 50 for every energy attached to this guy. So ideally, maybe mid to late game, we can throw this guy down, switch into it, and blow up something in our opponent's active spot. So Victini V, 220 is a really good number to hit for, but sometimes we do want those big one-hit KOs, so something like Heatran is nice in those instances. Steaming Stomp is also kind of like an okay attack. 2 fire and a colors for 130. That can knock out a Zacian V, so this attack is still kind of okay as well. Coming up next, we have a copy of Talonflame V. So this is a Pokemon V with 190 HP. Lightning weakness, which is important to note just because everything in this deck up until this point has been weak to fire. So we do have another way at, covering our typings a little bit. But the one thing I really do like about it does have free retreat. So something that is really good, especially when most of these fire Pokemon have such clunky retreat costs. But it has the first attack here for a colorless energy. You can do it even on the first turn of the game. You can discard your hand, draw 6, so that's fine. Especially if we do go first, this can be a nice attack just to help get us set up. But also just have another attack for 2 fire and a colorless, does 160, and you discard an energy. So just a very, average amount of damage. Victini VMAX actually is not a very good Dedenne killer. So that is something I am attempting to sort of remedy in this deck. We're great at picking off Crobats and Eldegoss and all that stuff, but against Dedenne, we're still only hitting for 100 damage. So we need alternate ways at picking off some of those easy prizes on our opponent's bench, and Talonflame can be one way we can do that. But of course, we also have one copy of Cramorant V to serve kind of a similar reason in this deck for that Spit Shot attack. 3 colorless energy, does 160 to one of your opponent's Pokemon, you discard all energy. So again, we want ways at knocking out the Dedenne since our main attacker is not that good at doing that. Cramorant and Talonflame are both good additions for that. But speaking of which, we do have a couple copies of Dedenne GX ourselves for that Dedenne changeability. Just discard our hand and draw 6. We also have a copy of Crobat V to be able to draw until we have 6. So some turns, of course, we can't play 2 Dedennes in the same turn, but we can play a Dedenne and a Crobat. Dedenne is probably our preferred 2-prize support Pokemon, but Crobat is definitely good to allow us to be able to use both these guys in the same turn. And last of our multi-prize support Pokemon is going to be one copy of Eldegoss V, kind of a staple in fire decks just to be able to get back things like Welder and Boss's Orders with that ability that allows you to get a support card from your discard back into your hand. And then the last of our Pokemon is going to be one copy of Phione. Kind of an interesting inclusion, but the thought behind this is, with Victini VMAX, we want to be attacking into Pokemon VMAX. And if your opponent is forcing you to attack into, like a Pokemon GX, you might not want that, and being a Welder deck means we probably can't play Boss's Orders as frequently as some of the other decks in format. So oftentimes Phione will be an alternate way at allowing you to attack into a Pokemon V or VMAX if you do need to. Up next from there though, 4 copies of Welder, as expected, probably one of the best supporters we have still in the format. Attach 2 fire from hand to one of your Pokemon, draw 3 cards. So yeah, we can easily power play Victini in one turn. Likewise, if we have an additional energy in hand, we can also fully power up basically any of our other fire Pokemon as well outside of our Reshizard. I guess excluding its GX attack, of course. But yeah, Welder, kind of the lifeblood of fire decks for the longest time now. But also we have 3 copies of Professor's Research. So normally a lot of fire decks rely a little bit more heavily on Welder and sort of forgo a lot of these traditional draw cards. But Victini VMAX is a little bit different in that regard because this is one of the few fire decks I think doesn't necessarily even need Welder to get up and running. You know, this is actually a deck I find that I like going first a lot of the time, to be honest, because we can get down an attachment on our Victini V. The next turn, we can just play a research and attach another fire manually from hand. And so this type of deck really allows those sorts of plays a little bit more frequently. It feels nice to be able to not have to live and die by whether or not you have Welder in hand. And to round out our supporter cards, we just have 2 copies of Boss's Orders. So this is kind of a staple count for fire decks, but this is actually a card I think you could increase in this deck. Just because a lot of times normal fire decks of the past are more reliant on having Welder every turn, meaning that Boss can be a little bit tricky to play on certain turns. But since, like I just kind of went on a spiel about, we don't need Welder as often, meaning that our supporter for turn can potentially be a boss, you know, more so than other fire decks. So this actually could be a card that I could see increasing, but that's why I have the Fion in there. I felt like the standard 2 boss count for the fire decks plus the Fion would be sort of enough gusting options. And of course, just to recap, Boss Source just lets us switch our opponent's active with one of their bench Pokemon. We are reliant on attacking specifically into Pokemon V and VMAX with our Victinis, so Boss's Orders or Fion could be ways at helping get around maybe a 1 prize Pokemon in the active or a Pokemon GX, just as an example. For our Stadium cards, we have 2 copies of Giant Hearth, pretty much a staple of fire decks. We discard we discard a card from our hand, then search a deck for 2 fire energies, put them into our hand. You guys know the combo at this point. You Giant Hearth, get your 2 fires, Welder 2 of them down, draw some cards for turn. Going on to our item cards, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball just to find our basic Pokemon, but we also have 4 copies of Pokemon Communication as well. So Communication can allow us to find our basics, but of course we can also use it to find our evolutions, which Quick Ball will not allow us to do. So of course with Communication, we put a Pokemon from hand back into our deck, and then get a different one back out. So again, mainly to find our Victini VMAXs. Up next from there, we have 4 copies of Switch in the deck. You know, a lot of the things in this deck do have kind of a chunky retreat cost outside of our Talonflames, so Switch is going to be very important for that. And also to activate Heatran GX's ability as well, we're going to need some switches for those turns too. So we have 2 copies of Big Charm in the deck. So this is a card I do think is probably kind of important just because Victini's HP is a little bit on the lower end. 310 is, you know, a lot more than your average Pokemon V. But still, it is within 1-shot range of a few Pokemon out there. So think of something like Eternus VMAX. Pushing that 270 damage cap it normally has up to 310 really isn't that tricky if you have, you know, Poison and multiple Toxicroaks, or like a heavy Zigzagoon engine with Scoop Up Nets. Also the new Single Strike Urshifu VMAX deck, which we just did a deck profile on the other day as well. That is a deck that can push up above 300 HP fairly easily, so Big Charms I think are going to be a little bit important to be able to survive against a lot of these popular decks that are seeing play. Big Charm, of course, also good on other things too, like if you get these down on the Denes, Crobats, Eldegoss, etc., those can keep your multi-prize support Pokemon here out of range of an Ultimate Ray from ADP. So Big Charm, just a really solid card, I think, right now in the format overall. We also have 2 copies of Reset Stamp. I did start out with 1 in this list, but quickly found I wanted 2. Even 3 wouldn't be bad, to be honest, but 2 has kind of been a sweet spot, I think, for most of my different Welder decks I've been playing for a while now. You just have your opponent shuffle their hand into the deck, draw equal to the amount of prize cards that they have remaining. We also have a copy of Fire Crystal in the deck, so we get to put 3 fire energy from our discard back into our hand. So just a little bit of energy recovery. Luckily though, unlike a lot of the other fire decks, we're not too reliant on, you know, a card like this compared to something like Blacephalon, just as an example. We're a pretty low maintenance attacker, but the 1 Fire Crystal does still feel nice a lot of the time. We also have a copy of Tool Scrapper in the deck. So Tool Scrapper, of course, allows us to discard up to 2 Pokemon tool cards in play. So this is going to be mainly to discard a lot of those HP increasing or damage reduction tools like Big Charms or something like Metal Goggles, just as an example as well. So just to be able to make our Pokemon hit better numbers with our attacks. And we also have 1 copy of the new Billowing Fan as well. So this allows us to remove a special energy from one of our opponent's Pokemon, put it at the bottom of their deck. So even though we're not discarding it, this is still a very disruptive card. It's going to set your opponent back in attachment for turn. And right now there's actually a few energies that kind of give us a little bit of trouble. I think the big one that sort of comes to mind is going to be Coating Metal energy. So by playing this, we can remove this Coating Metal, still be able to hit things like Zacian or Luke Metal for weakness. We can remove the Hiding Dark energies that Eternus frequently plays. We can remove those Speed Lightnings that Pikarom plays, the Horror Psychic energies that Dragapult plays. We have two new very good special energies coming out in the same set for Battle Styles as well. So I definitely expect special energies to be on the rise, and Building Fan seems like a really solid card coming into the new format. So just seems like a lot of different decks we could potentially capitalize on by playing this thing. And going on to our energy, we have 3, 6, 9, 11 copies of basic fire energy in the deck. I feel like that should be enough. Between all of these and our fire crystal, we should be able to have plenty to accelerate with Welder, and also just find when we need, especially since we have Giant Hearth in the deck as well. But on top of that, we're also playing 2 copies of Heat Fire energy in the deck as well. This is going to be a special fire energy that increases our HP by 20 when attached to a fire Pokemon. Again, the reason for this is because our Victini VMAX is a little bit within range of some of those one-hit knockouts on some of the other Pokemon VMAX that are running around in the format. So if we don't have our big charms, hopefully we can draw into our Heat Fire energies and they will, you know, kind of do the same job that we're looking for. But also too, I mean, don't forget about Reshizard. It has 270 HP. Being able to increase that to, you know, up to 320 or even 340 if you have a big charm and both Heat Fires, is something that's pretty strong as well. And that's going to be the list that we're checking out, guys. So Victini VMAX, I think this is a card that is a little bit slept on. Like, it doesn't have the insane raw damage output of something like Sense Scorch, but I do think there are a lot of pros to this deck. I think this is one of the few Welder decks that is actually completely fine going first, just because of how low maintenance of an attacker Victini is. You naturally sort of free up extra space in your deck by not needing something like Volcanion. And even though we have a pretty big toolbox of attackers to go toe-to-toe with any of the other major attackers in the game right now, Victini VMAX itself is just such a good Pokemon at taking cheap KOs on other things in the format, like Crobat Vs, Eldegoss's, etc., that might be sitting on your opponent's bench. But I want to hear your thoughts down below. What do you guys think? Do you like this list, or are there any cards that you guys are contemplating running in this archetype? Definitely sound off down below in the comment section. Let me know what you guys are thinking. And also too, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you are itching for some more Victini VMAX content, definitely check out the live match showing off this deck in action. Again, when it does go live, I will have a link down below in the description. And in the meantime, smack that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever that video goes live and the rest of the Battle Styles content I have planned for the future. But that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy today's content. If you did, of course, smack that like button, and if you can, consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, where actually our patrons have very early access to this list over there, or you can pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.